The 2012 Sprint Cup Series season would be remembered for many things. Clint Bowyer joining MWR and having one of the best seasons of his career. Dale Jr. snapping his winless streak. Hendrick Motorsports' 200th win. Gordon v. Bowyer. Logano punting Mark Martin out of the way at Pocono. The best finish in NASCAR history. Dodge's last win. The huge wreck on the last lap at Talladega, and much more. But what no one knows is that this would be the greatest championship battle that we never got. So with that being said, let's break down the 2012 season. In the first 6 races, we would have 5 different winners. Matt Kenseth would win his second Daytona 500, while Denny Hamlin would win the second race at Phoenix. Tony Stewart would conquer Las Vegas and then Auto Club 2 weeks later. Brad Keselowski would win the race at Bristol, and Ryan Newman would round out the first 6 races with his win at Martinsville. So after the first 6 races, the top 11 drivers would all be within 1 race of each other. Greg Biffle would lead the points with his consistent finishes of 3rd, 3rd again, 13th, 6th, and 13th. Dale Jr., who was on a long winless drought, was only 6 points behind Biffle and would prove to be a factor for most of the season. There was also a 4-way tie for 3rd, just to state how close this season would be. Greg Biffle would retain his point lead with his win at Texas and with other finishes of 5th, 18th, 5th, 12th, and 4th. And this would also be when some of the true contenders would emerge. Matt Kenseth would now move up to 2nd, just 10 points off his teammate. Denny Hamlin 3rd, just 16 points behind. And Dale Jr. would still be in contention, just being 18 points back. This was how close the 2012 season was, and this would be the narrative for the rest of the season. At Dover, Matt Kenseth would be the best, finishing 3rd, and now just 1 point back off of Biffle. Dale Jr. would finish 4th and was now 10 points behind in 2nd. Biffle 11th and Hamlin 18th, 22 points behind. At Pocono, Hamlin would finish 5th and was now 19 points back off of new leader Matt Kenseth, who would bring home a 7th place, while Greg Biffle would finish 24th and was now in 3rd, 16 points back. Dale Jr. would finish 8th and was now 2nd, 10 points back. At Michigan, Dale Jr. would break a 143 race winless streak and win to make a charge at the point lead, and was now just 4 points back from Kenseth, who had a 3rd place finish. Greg Biffle came home 1 spot behind in 4th, and was now 3rd, 17 points behind. Meanwhile, Denny Hamlin would have a terrible day.
These cars are really slipping and sliding.
Oh, here we go.
See Montoya up
And there goes Denny Hamlin down on the apron, into the grass. Big damage for the 11. Caution is out for the 8th time today.
Oh. And I was just getting ready to say, these cars are really slipping and sliding on new tires. They go down in the corner and go straight up the racetrack. It just looks like a slide job.
Yes. On top of it.
It's incredible.
With that finish, that would seem to put him out of contention for now. At Sonoma, Biffle would finish 7th and was now 2nd, 11 points back. Kenseth would come home 13th and would retain his point lead. Dale Jr. would finish 23rd and would now be back in 3rd, 14 points back. At Kentucky, Dale Jr. would bounce back, finishing 4th and was now 2nd, 11 points back from Kenseth, who would finish 7th. Biffle would come home 21st and was now in 4th, 25 points back. But with all 3 being inconsistent, this would bring a new contender into the fold, and that would be Jimmie Johnson, who is now in 3rd, 23 points behind. At Daytona, Matt Kenseth would be the only contender in the top 10 and would have a 3rd place finish, while Dale Jr. would come home 15th. But Biffle and Johnson would not have such good days.
Oh, we got trouble, Larry. Coming to the tri-oval. A number of cars involved. Still spinning. Jimmie Johnson, Jeff Gordon on the grass, Regan Smith, Michael Waltrip back up through the groove, and there's Bill Elliott as well.
Yeah, and Jeff Gordon and those guys were up in the 4th, 5th, and 6th positions. So this thing, obviously, it may have started back a little bit, but it carried its way all the way to the front.
They're stacking up. They're stacking up.
Through turns 3 and 4
here we
for
go.
the final time.
Biffle.
Big crash behind the race leader, Tony Stewart. That's going to allow Smoke to pull away. What's going to happen behind him? Can Burton get there? No, he can't. Tony Stewart wins it at Daytona.
So at the halfway point of the season, we would have 3 contenders in the mix: Matt Kenseth, Dale Earnhardt Jr., and Greg Biffle. The next race at New Hampshire, Dale Earnhardt Jr. would finish 4th, closing the gap to 16 points behind Kenseth. Kenseth would finish 13th, while Biffle would come home 9th to slightly bring the gap down to 40 points. At the Brickyard, Dale Jr. would take the points lead by 14 points over Matt Kenseth, who in this race would have his own difficulties.
Oh, Joey Logano in trouble, turn 1. And here we go.
In the wall, guys, in the wall.
Matt Kenseth just talked about how he was struggling in some of the heavy racing since the restart. And now the NASCAR Sprint Cup Championship leaders got fire coming from under his car.
Greg Biffle would finish 3rd and was now 3rd in points, 22 points behind. But because of these results, Jimmy Johnson would be brought back into contention with his 4th Brickyard 400 win, and was now 27 points off of the lead. At Pocono, in a seemingly bizarre incident, all 4 contenders would be caught up in one incident.
Oh, Jimmy! Trouble! Kenseth in the wall, Biffle in the wall, Kenseth spins into the pack. Denny Hamlin.
Johnson would finish 14th, Biffle 15th, Kenseth 23rd, and Jr. would finish 32nd. And now the title fight would be tightened up, with the top 4 being within 8 points of each other. At Watkins Glen, in an absolutely banging finish, Johnson would take over the points lead with a 3rd place finish by 1 point over Greg Biffle, who had a 6th place finish. And Matt Kenseth would come home 8th and was now 3rd, 2 points back. Dale Jr. would have a terrible day, finishing 28th and was now 17 points behind. At Michigan, which was a race where all the contenders would be within a shot to win, and Johnson, who thought he had the race in the bag, would all fall apart.
48 car.
Yeah, there was about a half a second difference last lap.
Wrong with that 48. From the 48 car.
Make sure we finish it, bud.
Other Hendrick Motorsports cars with engine troubles earlier today. Inside of 6 laps to go, Johnson loses the lead, Dave.
A lap ago, he said motor laying down, and they radioed back as if they weren't sure if he was kidding or not. He's not.
This blown engine would also produce one of the funniest NASCAR radio sound bites ever.
Got to be kidding me! Oh, God!
But because of this, he would go from 1st to 4th in the standings. It was now 28 points behind the leader. Greg Biffle would win the race and take a somewhat commanding point lead over new 2nd place Matt Kenseth. Kenseth would finish 17th. It was now 20 points back. Dale Jr. would come home a solid 4th place. It was now 3rd, 22 points back. At the Bristol night race, Johnson would have a bounce-back week, finishing the night 2nd and would close the gap to 11 points. It was also now in 2nd. Dale Jr. would come home 12th and would now be in 3rd, 15 points behind. Point leader Greg Biffle would have a rough night, finishing the race in 19th. While all this happened, Matt Kenseth's day would fall apart.
Well, he got to the line that he wanted to, so see how far Kenseth drives it in here. He couldn't get his slide job to work quite as good. It's a lot of contact.
Oh, no, there they go.
Wow, that didn't work out for either one of them.
With that race, he was now 4th, 26 points behind. And with 12 races to go, this would set up for one of the greatest title fights in history. At Atlanta, Greg Biffle would come home 15th. It was now only 8 points over 2nd place Dale Jr., who had a 7th place finish. Matt Kenseth would come home 9th. It was now in 3rd, 21 points back. With Greg Biffle having a mediocre race, this would bring a new contender in the fold. The other new contender was Brad Keselowski. Brad up to this point was only in his 3rd year in the Cup Series and was now within a shot to claim his first Cup title, 48 points off of Greg Biffle. However, Jimmy Johnson's race at Atlanta wouldn't turn out the way he wanted.
Yeah, he had to restart on the outside the last time, and that didn't work to his advantage at all. You see Truex struggling up top.
Oh, and then look at Hamlin get the big run off the corner.
And here comes Keselowski. Oh, trouble. Jimmy Johnson turned into the wall. He's collected Ryan Newman. Sam Hornish also involved.
With that, he was now 4th, 31 points back. At Richmond, Biffle would extend his lead with a 9th place finish over Junior's 14th, which put him 12 points back in 2nd. Matt Kenseth would have a solid night, finishing 5th, and was now 3rd, 17 points back. Jimmy Johnson would finish 13th, putting him back by 34 points in 4th. Keselowski would finish 7th and was now 46 points behind. At Chicagoland, Keselowski would win the race and was now 5th, 30 points behind leader Greg Biffle, who would finish 13th and would have a 7-point advantage over Dale Jr., who would come home 8th. Matt Kenseth would finish 18th and be put back to 21 points behind in 3rd. Jimmy Johnson would finish 2nd and would also be 21 points behind. At Loudon, Biffle would finish a mediocre 18th and was now only 2 points ahead of Dale Jr., who finished 13th. Jimmy Johnson would finish 2nd and was now 3rd, 4 points back. Matt Kenseth would finish 14th and was now 16 points behind. Keselowski would come home 6th and was now 5th, 17 points behind. At Dover, Keselowski would win Dodge's last race and would vault himself up to 3rd, 7 points behind new leader Jimmy Johnson, who had a solid day finishing 4th. Previous points leader Greg Biffle had a mediocre day finishing 16th and was now 4th, 9 points back. Junior finished 11th and was still 2nd, 6 points behind. As for Kenseth, he would not have such a good day.
Trace out, we see smoke there, we're getting a caution.
Caution clear.
Matt Kenseth, something under the rear suspension of that car.
Yeah, we talked about that to start the show, how hard this track is on the cars, the suspension parts. It looks like he's failed something in the rear suspension. Similar, it looks like, yeah, definitely the track ball on the left side.
I think it's broke off the truck army, guys. I'm trying not to saw the drive shaft in half here.
With that, he was now 6th, 44 points behind. At Talladega, the race would end in chaos with the Hendrick cars and Keselowski all getting collected in a last lap crash.
Pushed by Casey Mears. Kenseth with Harvick behind him. Oh, there's contact.
Get out of you now.
Stewart into the middle of the pack and over.
Fortune's out.
And a huge wreck to end this race.
With those results, the standings with 6 races to go would look like this. There would be 8 drivers within a shot of a title. 6 of the drivers would be looking for their first championship. Brad Keselowski, Greg Biffle, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., and Clint Bowyer all looking for their first Cup title. Kenseth searching for his 2nd, and Johnson for his 3rd. One thing I didn't mention about the Talladega race is that the wreck on the last lap, Dale Jr. would get a concussion from it, and he would have to sit out the next 2 races and would fall out of contention. In the races leading up to the finale, Truex, Hamlin, and Bowyer, despite winning the race at Charlotte, were proved to not be factors in the championship fight. At Charlotte, the tie for the points lead would be broken, with Biffle finishing 4th, taking the lead by 1 point over Jimmy Johnson, who finished 3rd. Kenseth would come home 14th and was now 38 points back in 4th. Keselowski would finish 11th and was now 3rd, 6 points back. At Kansas, Jimmy Johnson would take back the point lead with a 9th place finish, and he would do it by 5 points over Brad Keselowski, who finished 8th. Greg Biffle would lose the point lead in this race with a miserable day.
He kept waiting for a caution because he knew that something had to happen there.
Oh, Biffle into the wall hard in the 16.
Just hold the brake here if you can. Just hold it right in the pit stall. Nice and easy.
Biffle was now 3rd, 18 points back. At Martinsville, Jimmy Johnson would win and extend his point lead to 14 points over Brad Keselowski, who would come home 6th. Biffle finished 10th and was now 32 points back in 3rd. Kenseth would finish 14th and was now 42 points behind. At Texas, Jimmy Johnson would duel with championship rival Brad Keselowski and prevail, winning the race and extending the gap to 19 points. Greg Biffle would finish 10th and was now 46 points back. Kenseth would come home 4th and was now 49 points back. Going into the penultimate race of the season, all Jimmy Johnson would have to do was have a problem-free day, and he would increase his chances at a 3rd title. But on lap 235, the championship would be blown wide open.
Keselowski very comfortable. We got a problem with the 48.
48 is into the wall, Vince. Jimmy Johnson has hit the wall.
Go ahead and wheel it around here, buddy. We'll get some new tires on there. We'll take a look at it. No brakes. That's fine.
You know, once again, that worst possible spot, this tire's going to let go, coming full.
With that incident, he would finish 32nd. Brad Keselowski would go on to finish 6th and would grab the point lead by 8 points over Jimmy Johnson, 29 points over Greg Biffle, and 39 points over Matt Kenseth. With 4 drivers going into Homestead with a shot at a title, this would be a must-see event. For Keselowski to guarantee himself the title, he needed to finish 3rd, if Johnson scored max points. Biffle would have to hope that Johnson would finish 18th and Keselowski 26th. If Kenseth were to win it, Biffle would have to finish 7th, Johnson 28th, and Keselowski 36th. A long shot to win it, but still a shot. At Homestead, Keselowski would qualify 3rd, Johnson 10th, Kenseth 11th, and Biffle 13th. The race got going, and Biffle would prove to not be a factor all day long, running outside the top 15 almost all day, while the other 3 would be right up there in the mix. Over the course of the race, Keselowski's car would start to fade, and he would fall down to 18th. Johnson's car seemed to be getting stronger, but when he came down for his last pit stop with 56 laps to go, it would all come crashing down.
He did a full chassis adjustment 4 times. That may be the last time that Jimmy Johnson's on pit road.
Might have missed a load. Yeah, I think he might be coming back, Doc.
Could be a critical mistake.
Saw that official.
We got to come back in.
Oh,
Wow.
boy.
Oh, my gosh.
We talked about the pressure on the pit crews. A mistake there.
You know, you can't come on back down pit road. That right, Jet? Yep, 10-4.
His pit crew would mess up and would short him 1 lug nut, giving Johnson a penalty and almost no hope of a 3rd championship. But with 40 laps to go, his championship hopes would really be over.
Jimmy Johnson is off the pace. And Jimmy Johnson is on the apron on the access road to the inside. Look at the smoke inside the car. And no, that's not coming out of Jimmy's ears.
I thought I saw something coming out of the back of the right rear of the car, but I thought maybe it was sand coming up off the track because it was running really high, but it must be something else. Doc?
They're thinking it's a drivetrain problem. They're looking under the car. They got a vibration, something rubbing, and they said maybe it's a drivetrain coming through the firewall. The smoke got worse. Now Jimmy has shut the engine off, fired it back up.
His engine would blow up, ending his chances at a 3rd title. The race would go on, and Keselowski at this point would just have to finish 26th to win the title, and he would end off his season with a 15th place finish and a Sprint Cup Series championship. Brad Keselowski either way would have been the 2012 champion, although in our timeline he would have done it in more dramatic fashion. This season would be truly one of, if not the greatest points battle in NASCAR history. Too bad that we never got to see it. Well, that'll do it for today, guys. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week for 2013.